I can confirm you're being heard now.
Cool. All right.
Woohoo!
Glad to get it working.
Rock on. Well, at least now we won't have this problem in the future because we know what to do.
Yeah, learning experience for sure.
All right. Well, I guess we'll go ahead and get started on our conversation. We got at least 2 people listening, so they'll get a kick out of it. So, first off, let me catch up with you. So, I first heard about this story because there was a documentary that was on Discovery Channel. And, well, I should say Travel Channel. It's a show, I don't know if you ever heard of it, called Destination America. So, I watched this documentary, and it was on a place called Boston, Ohio. And being familiar with the area, I was like, Boston, Ohio? I've never heard of a Boston, Ohio. I've heard of a Boston Mills. I've heard of a Boston Heights. But I haven't heard of a Boston, Ohio. So, I went and watched the documentary. I was a little skeptical of what I saw. But that being said, I did read up on it and found a lot of interesting things. So, Helltown is a place that basically... So, the area used to be called Boston, Ohio. It's basically right near where Peninsula, Ohio is. And back in 1974, Gerald Ford, the president, had issued a proclamation declaring the area was going to be taken over via eminent domain because they were going to use it to turn the Cuyahoga Valley Recreation Area into a national park. And that was the whole idea at the time. Only national park in the state, exactly. So what they did was they issued eminent domain. This was in 1974. I saw an actual old TV8 clip. That's a news station in Cleveland that is still around today, WJW. And the clip was showing the residents of Boston, Ohio, just basically being forced from their homes. There was a lot of anger and resentment. People were pissed off. You know, they had spent their entire lives there, essentially. So after that had been issued, they were basically forced out. Now, here's where it starts to get really strange. After the town was abandoned, you would expect everything to have been repurposed for the purposes of this national park. However, the town still sits there to this day. It sits there decaying, empty, but it's not a part of the park. The park is around it, but the town itself is untouched. And what's really strange about that is the big deal they went through to get these houses so that they could tear them down. But they're still standing. Also of interest, and what got a lot of people ruminating, is the fact that they had gotten, they had basically gotten restricted area pasted all over the place. They closed every road that went into it, and their goal, from what I understand, was to keep people out. So you can imagine that is the perfect recipe to get people talking, and then the rumors start to fly. So before we really get into the conspiracy theories and rumors about what is happening, how familiar are you with the actual location?
Yeah, well, again, I kind of grew up around that area, to be honest. And
really?
I've heard of it every now and then, yeah. So, I mean, I grew up in the, I would say adjacent to the Akron area, and you're talking about, Akron Peninsula, you're talking about off of, Route 80 Turnpike, Boston Mills, like you said, where they have Brandywine, the ski area. So, yeah, I mean, you've heard about it. I've heard it spoken about, and to be honest, I really didn't hear a lot about the call the mysterious and the conspirious, when I was younger.
I like that, the conspirious. That's good.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, chalk that one up. Yeah, I found it interesting when you had mentioned it to me, that you I remember you had mentioned that you had watched this documentary, and you're like, hey, well, wait a minute, but then there's some things that came out about the documentary that was raising some red flags and questions, and yeah, man, I thought it was an interesting piece to kind of dive into, but I personally hadn't heard anything really about it. There had been just a couple things about the ghost stories, and I know it's the one thing I heard. I think back in high school was like the satanic stuff that goes on.
Oh yeah.
Like any kind of decrepit area, when you're banned from being there, you're going to have that popping up, so that's almost a given.
Most definitely.
But yeah, I mean, like I said, it's definitely intriguing.
Yeah, most definitely. I know that in some of my research, some of the stuff that I was kind of blown away by that I found out was, if this was going to be for a national park, right? Which I completely understand, and you're going to force people out of their homes to the point where, they tried to sue the federal government. I mean, it's a big deal back in the day, from what I understand. So you're going through all this trouble, but then you don't actually use the land. You just turn it into some weird abandoned place, and you cordon it off and tell people to stay out. Like, it just there's something that just doesn't add up about this story, and I can see why the rumors run rampant. So the special I'm talking about, and we'll start to get into some of the conspiracy theories here. So essentially, this is a region that has been plagued with pretty much everything you can think of. If you go to YouTube and you type in Helltown, you're going to see all kinds of videos of people who snuck in there. Supposedly, they've got pictures of ghosts. I think somebody in there had some sort of werewolf. I mean, the sky's kind of the limit. I'm waiting for the Bigfoot one to show up. But yeah, a number of the myths surrounding the vacant property have to do with this Presbyterian church that's on the site. And if you look at the actual architecture of it, you can see a cross that's upside down. Now, from what I understand, this is actually very common to see this. It's not an upside-down cross. It's just an expression of Gothic architecture, and it appears like an upside-down cross within the archway of the church. So, of course, the rumor started that, this must be where all the satanic happenings occur. Of course.
Hell yeah. Now install me on the
But in addition to the church, a couple other things include, like, there was a bus that was abandoned, and I guess the bus crashed, went off the road. Several kids on the bus were killed. The bus to this day still sits off this highway, but from what I understand, there's no record of any sort of fatal crash that had ever occurred on this road.
No, there's a lot of talk, a lot of
talk.
Very thick.
My favorite one is the Peninsula Python. Apparently,
I do remember that. Yeah.
I may mispronounce this, but it's called the Krajecki dump spill. So it is a fact that and there's actual pictures of it, even like from the EPA. It is a fact that this area, that there were some manufacturers that used to dump a lot of chemicals in this dump area that's not too far from where that sits, that town. Mm-hmm. And one of the rumors is that people have been attacked by and photographed what they call the Peninsula Python, which is apparently this monstrous snake that is seen roaming near the dump, which I always thought was a pretty fascinating story.
Yeah, no, that one was a kind of interesting one, and to your point too, it is. It was designated. I can't remember the term. I'm trying to think of what it is. A super fund, or that's it. A super fund site, and that's a government designated site for contamination. So they utilize it as a dump, or have been utilized as a dumping space for whomever, whether it's government or not. But they basically go in there, do a bunch of soil samples and samples of the environment, and if those samples reach a specific level, they determine it a Superfund site. Superfund. So that's kind of how it's pronounced. And I was kind of taking a look at it, and there are levels of like lead and PCBs, which are again like man-made chemicals that kind of cause different health issues and rashes and just kind of funky stuff. But I think that kind of brings up an interesting point that you kind of mentioned too, is with the government kind of jumping in there and saying, hey, we're taking this over, eminent domain, peace out. It's just interesting that there isn't more information about that other than, it's a national park, this is great. But you know, just those factors that are on paper, you know, it's on public record that it's, you know, a toxic area. People got to stay out. It's just, you know, as you mentioned, kind of more, I think, to the tail than what meets the eye.
Yep, absolutely. It's funny you said that too, because one of the things that people commonly think the town was abandoned had nothing to do with the park, which would, how the hell did I fall down this hole? Which would explain exactly why the town was abandoned and why there's mystery surrounding it and why the actual town is still there, you know, just kind of decaying and rotting if it was a chemical spill. However, the government's denied that, which I found equally fascinating. And one of the things that tends to make me think almost right away is, if it was a chemical spill, why would you not just say that, right? And the reason I mention that is because chemical spills have happened before in the United States. They've evacuated the place, and they were quick to send out that warning because they wanted to keep urban explorers away. Because, you know, as soon as something crazy happens, place gets abandoned, you're going to have about 30 people lined up.
You're going to go there.
You're going to go there. Absolutely. Who doesn't love a good ghost hunt or exploring a, you know...
Or just take it to the man and say, hey, I'm going to go where I want to go. Right?
Absolutely. Just to give some props, actually, to a YouTube channel that I really like called The Proper People. They don't do ghost hunts or anything, but they do go and explore abandoned places. Like, they went to one of the largest power plants in the United States that's defunct in Philadelphia. They go and explore places like that, and it's called The Proper People. They're really good. Check them out.
Yeah, check it out.
That is an unpaid advertisement for a YouTube channel that I like. But yeah, that, you know, and so I know that this is one of the places that they've been clamoring to do as well. But that gives you an idea, though, of how quick people are to go explore these places. So it would just seem to make sense to me that if there was some sort of chemical spill, they would have said that. The other thing that came to mind in regards to that is, you know, Centralia, Pennsylvania. I don't know if you've heard of Centralia, but it was the inspiration for the Silent Hill movie.
Yeah, the underground fires, man.
Yes. And to this day, the coal mines underneath Centralia, Pennsylvania still burn. You can't really get there. Most of the buildings were actually demolished, so there's really nothing there but cracked pavement and toxic gas seeping from the ground. But
yeah, they're just waiting for it to fall into itself, basically.
They're just waiting to do it, yep. They have no idea when. So yeah, that's why I've always been suspect of, if it was just a chemical thing, why wouldn't they say that? Because it's never been a big secret before. Yeah. And that's where you start to get all of the creepy stuff that starts to come into foray. Not just the Peninsula Python, but my favorite is, apparently there were children that were slaughtered by an insane killer, believed to be a group of Satanists. There's a superstitious claim that if you peer through the vehicle's windows, you know, in the... so you remember the school bus story that I was telling you about? Apparently these children, there wasn't a school bus accident. There was a serial killer that killed these children, and he stuck their bodies in a school bus, which definitely makes for a scary bedtime story for somebody who's younger. But yes, they stuffed these bodies in there, and apparently the bus is still there to this day. If you peer in the windows, the rumor is that you can see ghosts of the killer's victims sitting inside. I will tell you this. If I looked in there and I saw ghost kids sitting in there, I would shit my pants.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't even be there looking, so that's okay. Right? Yep. Road's closed, guys. We're getting the hell out of here.
Road's closed. I'm trying to catch up to you.
I would say one of the cooler things that I really was intrigued with some of the stories is there was the mention of the Wendigo, and that's a really old time myth and Native American legend, actually. And that was one of my trails that I kind of was following down when I was reading about Helltown, was, you know, mentions of the Wendigo, whatever you want to call it, Wendigo, I think is the way it's actually pronounced. And I just found it intriguing how, you know, if you're not familiar with it, it's basically an evil, cannibalistic spirit. Whether it takes the shape of a monster, or there have actually been documented court cases where people have succumbed to cannibalism, being stuck out in the elements, and there had been documented court cases where folks have actually claimed that the Wendigo was involved. There was, I think in the 1930s or 40s was some of the most recent stuff. You know, you check the research, but yeah, it was interesting. They have people come back from being exposed out in the wilderness with a group of folks, and they come back by themselves. Everybody's kind of like, hey, what happened? And lo and behold, as I said, cannibalism. And I just thought it to be kind of a cool tie-in with some of the local Native American legends. You know, I think
for sure.
This area, peninsula, is very rich in Native American, or at least it was very rich in Native American lore. You know, before settlers moved in the 1700s and 1800s. You know, you're talking about the Algonquins. You're talking about you sprinkle a little Iroquois in there. So just a lot of respect that I have for a lot of mythology and story based in the Native American perspective. I just found that to be really interesting.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's some great insight. Oddly enough, too, that's the perfect segue for the second piece of this, because the one thing that the one thing that is interesting is the documentary, that Travel Channel documentary called called Destination America. That was actually what their documentary was on. They were making a lot of assertions to the Wendigo. The documentary, it actually starts out where supposedly in 2016, this group of college kids went to the former site of Boston, Ohio. They live streamed it. In the live stream, they get attacked by what looks like some sort of... I'm trying to think of how to describe it. If you've ever seen a picture of a Wendigo, or if you haven't, look one up and you'll get an idea. But I want to say kind of cat-like, but more standing on two hind legs. Kind of a look to it. That's at least gives you a starting point for what you're looking at. But they got attacked in this tunnel, and you clearly see it, and the person died. And I gotta admit, already I'm kind of suspect, because I went to look up this video on YouTube and I didn't find it. So now that doesn't necessarily mean that it didn't happen. What if, let's put our metal conspiracy hats on and ponder for a second. What if there was a possibility, that video did exist and it got buried by persons unknown? And that's always a probability, because information's kept from us all the time. I'll never forget when Obama was being interviewed on. And this one guy asked him, he goes, "Do you know anything about UFOs?" And he said, yes. He goes, "Have you seen any information, about the existence of extraterrestrials?" And he said, I can't speak to it. I can't comment on it." And I thought that was a very telling answer, because if there was nothing to talk about, you would just say that, right? That's my thinking anyway. If there was nothing to say, wouldn't you be like, "Nah, there's nothing. Sorry to disappoint you." So there's so much that we don't know. But that being said, I was already slightly suspicious of the YouTube video. So another thing that caught my eye, so you're familiar with Cuyahoga Community College, right?
Yep.
Apparently, one of so there was a professor that's in this documentary, and he says that he teaches the story about the Wendigo and the mysterious happenings of Boston, Ohio in his class. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. What also is interesting is, if you do a little homework on this guy, he is actually also on a Travel Channel special about mermaids. And he has a different name, but it's the same guy. And he is a professor at a completely different university. So I dug a little bit further. The people that appeared in this YouTube video, I'm just going to sell some guns real quick. The people that appeared in this YouTube video, they found audition tapes for them where they were auditioning for the role. Now, granted, that's not completely unusual, because if you've ever watched a real crime show, or if you've ever watched, really anything like, any sort of educational documentary where they're recreating the scenes.
Drama.
Yeah, there's production drama. However, when you're displaying this YouTube video as being the genuine article, and then you're seeing people read a script for it, then that clearly tells you that either the video was faked, meaning they faked it, or the documentary itself was, recreating that. Yes, exactly. So,
I think that's what came out when you mentioned the mermaid thing. I think that's what happened. I remember that in the news, where the first week or two, it was, maybe even just the first week, people were freaking out, like, what is going on with this? And it turned out to be a hoax. It really did. That's interesting.
And I got to tell you, there's a part of me that was very disappointed with Discovery Channel, because they own Travel Channel. That's a very reputable brand. There's a lot of good shows on there. Anything from from, a history of guns to war, like the History Channel is also under their umbrella. There's a huge history of very well done documentaries. So for them to be able to pass off something about a real area and it's totally fiction is incredibly disappointing.
Well, I think it's the slave to the entertainment industry. I think trying to get that conversation going and getting that attention is really what the goal is. I could see how going into some type of cryptozoology or some of those, mysteries or the unsolved, kind of brings that to heightens the radar, heightens the attention to it, and that's what I kind of thought too. Like I said, to be honest, man, the first time I saw that mermaid documentary or the faux documentary, whatever you want to call it, I was like, wow, this is incredible. I was telling people, I'm like, man, you got to see this. They have some cool photos and like they're talking to people. And then again, quickly thereafter, it kind of came out, and they, obviously showed that it was a fraud. But for the entertainment value, I mean, I can't deny it. I thought it was pretty interesting. But I think, I guess I was disappointed that they didn't come out right and label it as an entertainment piece. But again, I think that was kind of the goal, to pique that attention and get people talking. And it worked. It did it.
Oh, they definitely succeeded there. However, I did notice too that there was a lot of online backlash where a lot of people said, I'll never watch another documentary on Travel Channel again if this is the kind of shit you're going to pull. So it's a double-edged sword for sure. It's kind of like in advertising. Back in the day where advertising will pull strings. Sometimes they may pull it a little bit too far, and then once you push that envelope, the question becomes: is the outrage worth the likes that you're going to get for something? Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And kind of to circle back on like the Helltown area and some of the questionable actions of the Fed coming in and sort of locking it down. In my mind, it kind of lends me to, again, I definitely am sort of the train of thought to, nothing is really ever as it appears. I think there's a lot of underlying motivations for a lot of what happens in the government and to that point in the military. And I know that Ohio, as a state, is actually one of the most active military states. I guess like most active military areas in the country.
Right.
Think about it. You have the Dayton stuff, obviously. You have, what is it, Wright-Patterson down there? Yeah. So, and then up here in Northeast Ohio, they also have, a place that my father was actually stationed at the Ravenna Arsenal. And one of the reasons that they have bases here in Ohio is to prevent, the original reasons was to prevent satellite imagery, or not satellite, but they had planes back then. But because of the cloud cover, it was a perfect place, so you didn't have to worry about that. But again, just kind of going back to the Helltown thing, I think there definitely is something more involved. I think the government wanted people to stay away from there because of what I believe is an apparent activity of some sort, whether it is some type of chemical dumping. But I do think that they wanted to utilize the land. I don't think the National Park Service was the primary goal. And using eminent domain to get people out of there was the only way they were going to do it.
I agree. I definitely think, and that's the thing, that's what I had hoped to do with this particular broadcast, because there's plenty of things that we're going to talk about in future segments of this stream where it's a lot of truth and not much fiction. In fact, the truth is much scarier than the fiction that surrounded a place. But this is one of those cases here where there's a lot of fiction out there, not a lot of truth, and the questions that aren't answered are the most intriguing, and that's why I keep kind of going back to the fact that here's an area that was, abandoned. Well, not abandoned, but it was forced to be abandoned by the government, took it over. Oh, this is for our national park. Why is it still there? And nobody's been able to really answer that question solidly. Where are you, by the way?
I went and killed the boss already. I've been down the line here, man. So just follow the pile of guns.
I meant for this to be streaming and gaming and co-op.
I just walk at the same time here.
Yeah,
man. Let's go.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I just to that point, the fact that they just kind of had it abandoned, and they continue to this day to tell people that they're not supposed to be there. Who knows, man? Like I said, I always kind of think of places that, like a place like that. And again, I'm just kind of conspiracy in it. Put my tinfoil hat on. Who's to say that they don't have a facility there or something underground? And I think there's a lot more happening under the surface than there is on top of the surface.
Well, that's what they alluded to in the That's what they alluded to actually in the documentary, Disco, because the thing that I was kind of blown away by is, do you want to go back to Sanctuary?
Yep, we're gonna head back. Here we go.
Let's head back.
There's a chest right here if you got anything.
Look here.
Ooh, nice.
Let me know when you're ready.
Where's the chest actually?
I just pointed to it.
Yo.
Right here.
Right in front of my face. Nice.
Even the blind hunter will find it. All right.
All right, I'm ready.
Hit it. There we go. Yeah, but yeah, I just think there's more to it than meets the eye. And I always am conspicuous of just blatant, generalized, no, can't use it, we have it, go away. It's just, okay. And again, I think it being a super fun site and having the chemical compounds, actually they have it listed online, the site name, the project, or whatever you want to pronounce it, project dump. And they have a list of the different types of chemicals that have been identified, again, through the EPA and the actual government measurements of the site. So, I mean, there's a little bit of, I guess, what you would call credence to what's been happening. But, I definitely think it's something intriguing. I think it's, I find it interesting as well. When you told me this topic was going to be discussed, I was kind of like, this is a cool one.
Well, you, my friend, get to pick the next one. I'm bestowing the honor of our next topic on you, and then I think after that one I'm going to do Elisa Lam, which is a good one in and of itself. Something I know you're familiar with because we've discussed that before as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely, for sure.
But it's fascinating. The whole. I'm going to go run to the vending machines. The whole just mystery surrounding that area is just really fascinating, and I'm curious as to how much of the documentaries and stuff that are out there. I'm curious as to if there's some real legit stuff. I saw one guy and I watched him go out there. He did find some creepy stuff. Obviously, no evidence though of some underground tunnel. So in the documentary, essentially, they find this underground tunnel. It was hidden behind a rock, and it's called the Conspiracy Network. Is essentially the name of the phony group in the documentary. And they went and they investigated it, and they did a geological survey of the area, and there wasn't supposed to be like big rocks where this rock was. So that was his reasoning to go back to the area and move the rock. Well, it turned out the rock was covering up a glass panel, and beneath there was a tunnel underground. And when you go into this tunnel, you could see that they had kept a evidence of a creature down there, which is later alluded to be the Wendigo.
All right, Genevieve. Get the hell
And this is that
out.
fake documentary, right?
Yeah, this was the documentary called Helltown.
Yeah.
It's on. It's posted on YouTube for anybody out there that's curious and wants to see it. But yeah, it's for event destination something like that. But it's from the Travel Channel. It's easy to find it.
I'll kill you all!
One of these days, I'm going to remember how the hell to get around Sanctuary. I don't know why I have the hardest time remembering where the hell to go.
You gotta run some laps, buddy. I'm telling you. You gotta start at point A and just go a couple times around the ship. It literally took me probably a good 4 to 5 days of gameplay to finally find my niche here.
Okay,
so.
Good. It's not just me.
Yeah, so you're not alone, man. You're good.
Yeah, the another thing that was featured in there. Now, especially, being from that area, this is something that, if it were true, we would know about it right away. But I guess back in the 80s or something, apparently there was some sort of compound that was in that area, in the Boston Peninsula area. And they were basically the cults that have been rumored to have been associated with Boston, Ohio, and the ones behind all of the mysterious activity. So, upon looking that up though in the newspaper, there's no evidence of an FBI shootout of some cult operating within the area. Again, it looks like another fabrication in the documentary.
Yeah, you get a bunch of fakes and a bunch of weirdos taking advantage of a situation or a story. I think for me, it's just whether it's a secret government site or whether it's a site that has hauntings or Wendigo, I think it's just something that I still respect in itself. It's a place that I think a place that has a storied past, kind of like that. I mean, for me, it's kind of one of those like, well. Maybe it just is best to kind of steer clear and let those who feel foolish enough to go and check it out on their own in the middle of the night, go for it, buddy. But it just for me, I've been looking at some of the research and some of the stuff that's kind of come up. A lot of the true facts kind of led it down to the path of how it was colonized in the 17 and 1800s. They had some stuff about folks that lived there. And then again, started like you said when you started the cast here in the 1970s when they issued the eminent domain. It's definitely an interesting tale to follow, and it's just kind of interesting to see how urban legend kind of takes a life of its own. And especially nowadays, when you have access to all these tools and all this media, and everybody needs their 5 minutes of fame. It's just interesting to see what it's turned into. But my takeaway from doing the research is definitely the interest and the respect of Native American legends and mythology. Because everything else, the ghost stories and the Satanists and all that stuff, you get that. But just the path that I took from hearing the Wendigo stuff and going down that way, I just found really intriguing. That was kind of the one that I really like to chew on. And I recommend it, just going down that path and kind of reading the tales from different tribes, in the Northwest, Northeast. Obviously they talk about the Bigfoots as well. But the Wendigo tale is an interesting tale. And it also gives me pause. Because it is, it's rather horrifying. It really is. If you really dig into it being what it is, an evil spirit possessing a person, or even to that point transforming a person into a cannibalistic being. I just kind of found that just something I could really chew on and say, wow, this is kind of intriguing. I'm going to keep going after this. So that was a good takeaway for me, though, my friend.
I love it. I'll tell you what, it makes for a good horror movie.
That's all.
Yeah, it does. I tell you, it does.
Yeah, especially with.
And I think there is something said with the federal government stuff and the land. That's something else I'm going to continue to look at just to kind of see. Again, I think Ohio's prime real estate for inconspicuous military installations is kind of the best way I would put it. So I think that's just another tip of the hat to that story as well.
Yep, I knew that too about the Ravenna Arsenal. The reason there was so much weaponry and things stockpiled there was because the cloud cover there is so ridiculous.
Yep. Well, they reactivated it. They actually deactivated it for a while. And that's, again, how we ended up here in Ohio. I had family stationed there. And they deactivated the base. And then right after 9/11 is when they reactivated it. And they do have, storage and tunnels and, all that stuff. And they reactivated it after 9/11 as an urban training facility for the military. Because all the old homes that were there for the people that were stationed on base, all the old buildings were still standing, and they transformed it into a urban combat training zone.
Wow. That is wild.
Pretty cool.
That is cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
I used to do deer hunts there. It was kind of cool.
Oh, nice.
Mm-hmm. Funny story on that, not to change the topics, but
go ahead.
I went with my old man one year to one of the hunts, and this was the year that that Disco Bigfoot didn't bring his glasses or his rec specs with him, and my father and I are sitting back to back on a tree. And I just remember him pointing out into the abyss, and I'm like looking, and I can't see anything, so there's just a blur of like brown and everything. And you know, that was one of the times where I guess I had a deer walk about 10 feet in front of me, and the old man, I can even to this day, I hear his jacket, just the noise you would hear from somebody pointing fervently out. You know, he's like pointing, and I'm like, I don't see anything. I don't see anything. So it was just a disappointing walk back to the car. But fun personal fact. It was cool.
That's awesome. Love it.
Good times.
That reminds me of my favorite Far Side cartoon where the deer's got the target on its belly and his buddy's like, bummer of a birthmark, Hal.
Yes, that's it. Far Side is classic.
Go on. Give the rogue side of the world.
But I would be interested, like I said, when you said about bringing up different topics, you know, it's kind of got me on a path of investigating perhaps some other places in Ohio. And again, this is always another topic for another time, but you have the Serpent Mounds, you have a lot of history here. And I think, you know, when I go back into, you know, I like the paranormal. I appreciate the paranormal and the perspective it brings. And you're talking about, you know, metaphysics and, you know, energies and vortices, and you know, I do think there's a lot going on here in the state of Ohio, and I think it's cool. It's very interesting, and it's cool stuff to dig into.
Oh yeah, there's all kinds of fascinating stuff. I've still said, what do these rogue marks look like, by the way? Oh, like that.
Yeah, you need the weapon to go.
That is freaking sweet.
Or if you have a rocket launcher, you can just blow it up.
Oh, that'll work too.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently there is more.
Yeah, running down the hill.
Bomb thief! Need your help. See, we're victims of our own success. Remember that vid where Troy super murdered your siren friend? Well,
I got this one here.
how do we top it? I don't know. Do we kill some orphans? Or kill some puppies? Cram a bunch of puppies in an orphanage? Burn them to the ground? It's a dilemma. What's gonna keep the offerings flowing? Oh, time. Maybe we'll let our followers decide.
Yeah, but I won't keep you geographically locked in, but I think there's a lot that Ohio has to offer as far as interesting tales and mysterious circumstances, you know, and like I said, just the trip that I took, the wiki trip, if you will, about the Wendigo, man, I thought it was a very interesting thing. So
yeah, it is
Glad
fascinating.
you brought that up today.
Yeah,
the Helltown leads you down a path that you didn't expect, and when you get down that path, you're like, "Hey, this is cool." You know,
well, Disco, like I said, that is the magic of, you know, what we're attempting to do here. I've always said my stream is more of my podcast with video games to complement it, because, you know, we both share a huge love of games, and, you know, there's different co-ops and things, you know, that we'll definitely be doing in the future. But yeah, I think this was a really good first discussion, and amazing topic to cover, really, just surrounding the legends of it. I mean, the documentary is, I will say, it's entertaining, no doubt, but just, you know,
I'm sure.
Take it with a grain of salt, you know, but I do think, though, that whatever's happened up there, there's more than meets the eye. I feel like whatever's gone on there, we haven't been given, we don't know the full truth of it.
Mm-hmm. And we won't, probably, but that's what makes it fun, man.
And no shit, that, you know, there are a lot more cults and things out there operating than people realize. I remember when we checked out a site like that when I, at this one place near this university that I went to school at, and I remember we went to check this creepy place out, and sure as shit, you know, we went, nothing really happened, and then all of a sudden, like, there was this truck showed up, and, well, this guy was just standing by his pickup truck, and he was, like, waving us to follow him, and he gets in his truck, and he starts driving off real slow. So we start following him, you know, and then every so often he would slow down, stick his hand out the driver's side window, and indicate, you know, follow me. And we kind of just, like, looked at the dude that was driving the car, and we were like, dude, I don't know where this guy's leading you, but I don't think you should be following him. You don't know where the fuck you're at. You don't know who the fuck these people are.
Who is this clown?
Right? Yeah, like, who is this clown? And I remember we stopped following. We turned around. We got to a stop sign. And to this day, I get chills. I'm not kidding you. I didn't see this, but the driver of the car said he saw it. And he's not a bullshitter. Like, he was scared out of his mind. He saw two people in dark robes that were watching us and watching the intersection of the road where we were behind a tree. And it scared him enough that he's like, fuck this, and he floored it and we got out of there.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, there's always stuff that goes on. I think that's what I love about doing kind of the mystery co-op hours, is the chance to just really dig into some really good mysteries. I mean, we've pretty much covered all there is really to say about Helltown. Here's another good mystery, though, we can talk about. Let's change topics now. And I actually have a surprise topic, because I would definitely love to get your thoughts on this. So let's talk a little bit about Jeffrey Epstein. Certainly a controversial character. A true piece of shit in every way. I mean, we're talking about a guy that was taking advantage of underage girls and potentially, using them in a business to have them serve to wealthy clients.
Billionaire pimp.
Billionaire pimp, yep. Connections that ranged everywhere from Bill Clinton to Donald Trump. Prince Andrew, I believe. Yeah, Prince Andrew. Who, by the way, still refuses to cooperate with investigators at all, which I find interesting. But the reason this one is an interesting mystery for me, and one of the reasons I wanted to bring this one up in our stream, is because we came to find out that here's a guy who, and as you know, I'm well familiar with Manhattan because I'm in Manhattan, and there's a prison on the upper part of the island. And in this prison, it's one of the most secure federal facilities in the country. They had him on suicide watch, and they were watching him real closely. They also had 2 guards that were stationed to watch him 24/7. Obviously, they have different shifts and rotations, but there were 2 guys that were supposed to be on duty in his cell area, as well as the fact that he was on video camera, his specific cell, because he was such a high-profile detainee. Mysteriously ends up hung in his cell. Everybody's saying, oh, it's suicide, close the book, end of story. Not so fast. I know sometimes these things do happen. These sickos, who prey on children get caught. A lot of times they can't deal with it. They know what they're doing is wrong. That was true of Jeffrey Dahmer. Jeffrey Dahmer tried to kill himself several times before they ended up getting him in prison. But this was a case here where, while I can believe that suicide is possible, the fact that the videotape disappeared, the fact that the guards can't account for their whereabouts, the fact that this was the most secure federal prison in New York City, you really kind of have to go, how much more hint do you need that something foul was afoot here?
Yeah. No, I concur, man. I mean, it just goes back to the old saying, dead men tell no tales, brother.
No, they don't. No matter how much you ask them, they just don't talk to you.
No, you can leave it to speculation, as far as who's involved with him and who perhaps utilized the service, per se, but and that's exactly what it is. When you're connected, when you're exposed to that level of people, to that level of power, you're expendable, man. I mean, it really is. And again, as I said, dead men tell no tales. That closed the book on that.
Yep.
You could go ahead and sit around and have an 8-hour podcast about who woulda, coulda, shoulda, but nobody's ever going to know. And at least the truth, anyways, unless somebody comes out with it. But I think there's enough money and there's enough influence to keep that exactly where it is today.
Their best chance of that really comes down to his girlfriend, who was basically the one who actually did the pimping. She was the one that recruited the girls. Yes.
Yep.
I don't look for that to happen. I also wouldn't be surprised if something happened to her. But
this place smells.
I guarantee you
they
that
actually had her deposition. They had it live broadcast via telephone. I remember getting an invite for it. I actually didn't join it. I was working that day. I wanted to, but the court had a live feed into the deposition when they first started the case. It was only about a month or two ago. Yeah, it was interesting. Right after they captured her, and maybe you could pull it up. I'm sure it's online somewhere. But there was actually a call-in line, so you could listen in to the legal arguments and the legal team start to stage the case. It was pretty cool. Yeah, and to your point too, I think it's one of those where she'll probably give enough to do what she needs to do to, self-preservation. I think is the key for her at this point. Unless she kind of has this, divine moment where she decides to let open her soul and let everybody in. But I just thought that was kind of crazy how they actually opened it to the public to listen to, and that whatever comes out of her, I the justice system is never as fast as we'd like it to be, but no. I am very interested to see where that comes out and what actually comes of that. Because I think at some point, either she's going to make a deal, and she's going to try to lighten the load of her own justice being given to her by giving it up in some regard.
Exactly.
So she was the keeper of the Black Book.
She really was, and I have a feeling that I just find it hard to believe that she wouldn't know I find it hard to believe that she wouldn't know as much as he would, given how close she was to him, given she was the one that did a lot of the recruiting.
Two predators, man. 2 apex predators in the game. It was actually pretty scary.
It was.
How efficient it was. And, what also is kind of, disturbing is just the effect that it had on some of the women that were involved in this. Just how frightening and how powerless you would feel in that kind of situation. For instance, you had ones that would go off to that private island that he had, and you're stuck on an island, 2 or 3 hour flight from the mainland. What are you going to do? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just, and it's crazy that people actually live like that. That exists. It's just disturbing in itself, and you don't have to be an altruistic person or a goody two shoe to say that's just pretty fucked up, man.
Yeah, exactly. Forgot about that. Exactly, and I think you make some excellent points, and it's sad, often that the media tends to they get involved with this, they spoil it. The left slant it to their side and say, oh, it's a Republican evil, and then the right says, oh, it's a Democratic thing, and they try to slant it. And it's like, I wish, and this is a subject you and I personally have quite often, but I really wish sometimes the media would just fuck off. You know what I mean? Like, they just report the facts, tell us what's happening, stop injecting politics into it, because there's very clearly some serious issues here, and all you're doing is adding into the hype but giving us no answers.
Yeah. Thanks for gaslighting this whole thing. Appreciate it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Those bandits won't lift a finger. Figures. Dumb bandits fell for Tyree.
Yes, so it is interesting to see where it goes. I hope it doesn't fall to the wayside. Because sometimes it's that time favors tyranny, or tyranny favors time.
Yeah,
it's kind of the term.
Yeah,
so
I like that.
Over time things kind of dissipate. The attention goes away, and things just end up kind of sliding away into the sunset. But this is one of those where I would hope to see some kind of continued action and intervention to it. It's just one of those where you would hope that either this Giselle chick goes up something, or some type of investigation leads to unveiling the depth and the breadth of this entire operation. Will it ever happen? Probably not. I would hope it would, but who knows? But that would be idealistic for me, just to kind of see it crack open the can and let all the worms crawl out. You know what I mean?
Yep, absolutely, because the story is far from over. There's a lot more that needs to be told. There's a lot more that needs to be found out, and it's one of those kind of things where the fact that just the fact that you have a circumstance where you have such a high profile person who has access to so many famous people, and it's not limited to a political party. It's not limited to different types of people, just in general. He had access to some very powerful people, and not just in our country, in other countries as well. And
global.
Yeah, and for that person to die under mysterious circumstances, and there's no video. The guards don't seem to know what the hell happened. I think one of them was fired, were they not? I think one or two of them were suspended. Or something.
Yeah, suspended. I don't. Yeah, but I mean, we know what it is. We know what it was. It was a total cop out. It was a total cover up. People had to shut him up. There was no way that he was going to be even given a chance to have a deal. You know what I'm saying?
That's what it sounds like.
Yeah.
That's what it sounds like.
The minute he got put back in. Now again, you got to think about his history too. He'd been the runaround like this before. And he was actually, and there was a few, whether Dateline 2020, that kind of television show. There were a case or two prior to where he was accused and not convicted of the federal offense of like prostitution, but I think it was more or less like a minor offense of influencing minors per se. And again, I don't have the real stuff in front of me, but I can't remember the attorney general for Trump was actually his defense lawyer that got him
I think I heard about this.
Yeah, that got him a lighter sentence from that whole ordeal when it first kind of came to light. Down in Florida is where it happened. And, I just found it interesting that, I think it reached an end to where there was just no way to keep it under wraps anymore after he had gotten, arrested this final time. And there was only one ultimatum. There was only one way to ensure that this shit keeps under wraps. And that's it.
Well,
there's no denying it.
And
I wouldn't think.
I think you bring up a great point, C, and I think that actually contributed to a part of his downfall too, because you figure once it was brought to light, that his attorney was associated with a guy who would be president, and then on top of that, you have a lot of powerful connections now tying into this, and what that means is that no matter who you are, and this is something any of them would do, whether it was Clinton, whether it was Trump, no matter who they were, it's not a party thing or a person thing. Once those people's names get roped up into it, they're going to sell them down the river to save themselves. And that was when he actually got arrested on the more serious charges and got locked up in Manhattan.
Mm-hmm. And once those big names start to get whispered, man, that's when you got a target, buddy. Like I said, when you start to expose the veil behind the veil where the real darkness lies, they're not going to want to be seen. They'll do whatever it takes.
There's a lot of truth to the old movie The Wizard of Oz when, the wizard is this big grandiose thing and it turns out he's just a balding little man hiding behind a machine and a curtain, and I feel like there's so many true applications of that in real life.
Oh, totally, yeah. Well, like you said, nothing is ever what it seems, and the river runs deep, man. There's so much that we would never really know, and we probably won't know. It's just a sad story all around, to be honest, and wholeheartedly can't convince me otherwise. Definitely was not suicide. He was put down. He had to be put down. That was the only way for the true darkness to be hidden. It really was. There was no other way around it.
Yep, I agree.
Too many people were involved. Yep, just too many people and too many places weren't going to take a chance. Night, night, Jeffy.
They all they are dancing.
Yeah, they're kicking it. And then I think, hold on, I'm going to hit this thing here. Where's the thing? Do you have your shot?
Oh, yeah. There's a mark. Yeah, let me find it.
Yeah, hit it. I don't know where it's at. I don't have it equipped. Check over here in the front of the house where this dancing person is.
No. Oh, there it is.
Hit it. Pardon me.
I love how my dude picked up a big ice bomb and just threw it over there. Like, fuck you.
That's it. Yeah. Such a good game.
Oh, that hurt.
Yeah, we'll see what how the story unfolds, man. I am definitely interested to see how it pans out. I just hope, again, as I said, it's not one of those things that just kind of falls away with time. You know, and people just tend to kind of, you know, ho-hum it and not pay attention to what it's really trying to tell you, you know?
Yeah, oh no, I completely agree. It's my fear that it ends up, you know, getting swept under the rug. And I think that's one problem that we have in our country. It's, you know, so many people get caught up in D's and R's, you know, but the real power in this country is a very select few group of people, and they're getting away with a lot of shit. And they get us arguing with each other about total dumb shit, and there goes the ball game.
Setting up listening devices to gather intel on the COV. Let's check his dead drop and see what he's
Yeah, so 1% and 2%, man. The haves and the have-nots. It's been the same way for millennia, dude.
Yeah, I got that right.
Yep.
Language, right?
But yeah, good stuff. I completely agree with you. Yeah, I'll be curious to see how that ends up with her, and if she ends up cooperating, and if she doesn't cooperate, I hope they nail that bitch to the wall.
Yeah, or a dark hole, man. Just open up the lid, throw her down there with a loaf of bread. Good luck, honey.
With a loaf of bread, I'm down with that.
Yeah, I'm not heartless. You know, give it a chance.
Exactly.
Snowball chance in hell, but it's still a chance, right? Yeah.
Check the drop.
Yeah, right now we're just going around trying to clear out the rogue riffraff.
So I was thinking for our next segment, if you want to, I know you have a couple good UFO topics. Maybe bring one of those to the table. I'll do some research.
Yeah, no, absolutely, man. I appreciate you letting me kind of poke around and see what might be a good discussion.
Well, this segment is our show. This is our segment, so that means that you know you get to make creative decisions as much as I do. It's important to me because I want the viewers to be able to I want the viewers to understand why you're somebody I've had in my life for many, many, many years, and why you and I have always just had really deep conversations. And I think it's the kind of shit that people find interesting and that they want to know more of. And so I definitely want you to be a driver of some of those.
I appreciate that, man, very much. And I'm glad to do it. Like I said, it's cool to do what we do normally and just share with people.
To the bloodletting!
Hopefully, you catch some folks with some like-mindedness that are interested in some of the topics that you talk about and that we talk about, and share the knowledge, share the love, man. It's just there's a lot of interesting stuff out there, and I'm just more than curious to dive into it and to dig deep in it, man. UFOs, paranormal for me, and I started my end of this whole Twitch is just gaming and the mystery, the paranormal. Having those discussions, and we've had depths of discussion about energies and aliens and just all the stuff that seems unbelievable. And funny enough, like I told you, I was binging the X-Files right now, and I kind of like it. It's like perfect timing because there's so much that can be kind of gained as far as topics and things that we can kind of dig into from that type of form as well. And I'm looking forward to it, man. I really am. Like I said, it's just something we do on the regular. And for me to be on here with you, brother, I thank you for it. It's really cool.
Oh, hell yeah. Absolutely. And, that's some good stuff right there. Yeah, I definitely... I'm definitely
and
excited.
I'll bring it, man. I'll bring some
deep.
cool stuff. I'm gonna open up the can. We're gonna go real deep. We're gonna go real deep, like LSD deep, bro.
Hey, man, bring it. I'm ready. The more the merrier, because I think the audience will appreciate it for sure.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, I just want to real quick